Welcome to the RealTrending podcast, where we speak to the brightest minds in real estate about business growth, leadership, trends, and strategy. I'm your host, Tracey Velt. I'm the Senior Director of Data and Content for HW Media, which encompasses both the Housing Wire and the RealTrends brand. And today I'd like to welcome Natalie Hamrick. She is the Executive Vice President for Christie's International Real Estate, and Chris Lim, who is the President of Christie's International Real Estate. So welcome, Natalie and Chris.
Thanks,
Hi,
Tracey. It's so good to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for having us.
No problem. So we were talking about the competitive pickleball at the Gathering of Eagles before we started this podcast, which was a fun discussion. But we're going to go into business now. So basically, I just want to start by talking about the direction of Christie's and as you build this luxury brand. So Chris, let's start with you and talk a little bit about the core values that you find invaluable growing the brand.
Thanks, Tracey. We were very clear about the direction when we first became stewards of the brand. It's almost 2 years ago. And we had a very clear mission to create the very best global network in the world of independent brokerages, period. And that core value for us was service. We say here at Christie's that it's not a level of service. It's actually not a price point. It's a level of service. And everything we do comes back to servicing, whether that's our brokers, our agents, or end consumers. We know that success would only be possible by delivering the best service.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to get into some specifics of that growth. And Natalie, I'm going to turn to you for that. Let's get very specific. I want to get a little granular about some of the kind of core strategies you use to grow. And if you could give me some numbers of how you've grown over the past couple of years, that would be great as well.
Yeah, I would love that. Well, I am a firm believer that you can't have growth without a solid foundation. And I'm also a firm believer that in order to grow, you have to maintain. But that does not mean maintain the status quo. I mean maintain the core values of who you are and your culture. So when we looked at what needed to happen first, when we took over the brand, it was very clear to me. And that was to focus on our current affiliates. Because, just like we tell all of our current affiliates now how important it is to re-recruit their current agents, it was imperative for us to do the same with our core network and the affiliates that had been with us forever, because they are, the backbone of our network. So it was important to re-engage and reset the network, to give them trust and establish credibility and provide that strategic vision for what we plan to improve, but also what we would maintain. And that was the brand and our close connection to the auction house. We also understood the importance of our involvement in recruiting for our affiliates. So Chris and I are deeply involved in invested in recruiting for our brokerages. We really see us as partners with them in this. And we've flown all over the country. I think Chris has some crazy numbers. Speaking of numbers, I think
it's like 600,000 miles.
550,000 miles.
Insane.
Somehow I'm still in economy though, Tracey. I don't understand how this is all working out for me, but that's fine.
Got a great vacation on those miles.
I know. Well, it's usually to another affiliate, but
yeah.
But through all of this, our core values are the constant, and everything we do is based on a culture of love and relationships, because relationships are everything, to us, and we never stray from that.
Yeah. And obviously, real estate is all about relationships on a hyper local level for agents and consumers and then for you. So can you give me a little more specifics on what you did to engage other than go to the affiliates? Were there some, really like special or different things that you did to re-engage, your current affiliates and then move on to recruiting new ones?
Yeah, I think it's really showing them literally what our new value proposition was. We have training and coaching. We have that culture of love, but what does that mean?
Right.
So we really showed them that we are now a brokerage owned by a brokerage. And At Properties literally still is our test kitchen. So we were able to really jump in with our current affiliates and re-engage by showing them what we could do, letting them see the technology, really introducing Chris, Mike, and Thad, because I had those relationships. So it was important to get Chris, Mike, and Thad in front of our current affiliates to show them who they were, what was important to us. And always, we go back to what Chris initially said, and that was to build a network of the best independent brokerages in the world. And we wanted to show them how we did that. So we did that through our value proposition, was our tech, our coaching and training, our marketing, and again, leading with love always.
And I will say, Tracey, that, that's our first year. I mean, I think that's why we flew. Last year we saw our first year was really foundational. And I think that's why we spent so much time on the road, is because we needed to create those relationships. Natalie actually had those because she had been with Christie's. But for me, it was really introducing myself and actually letting them know that what is different about the new network was that actually I had sold real estate. I'd actually owned a brokerage. And so I was very aligned with what our broker owners and our agents were going through.
Yeah.
And for, I think most of our audience already knows the connection with that Properties and Christie's, but Chris, why don't you just explain it for the audience so that they understand as well?
Great question. It's one we get often all the time. The way that I explain it quite simply is at Properties is Christie International Real Estate's largest U.S. affiliate.
Okay.
And so it falls within Christie's.
Okay, great.
And Tracey, I like to call it our test kitchen. Not only because we're in Chicago, which is, one of the culinary capitals, but also because I think it resonates a lot with our network. And we call it a test kitchen because everything that we do here at App Properties, we're able to take the best of it, test it, and then airlift it to our network. And it's built by agents for agents.
That's great. And speaking of Chicago, you're right, culinary capital, basically. We were there for a volleyball tournament, and I discovered the whole hog salt restaurants, which is Bavette's and Au Cheval and, Tivoli Tavern. Every night we went to a different one of those restaurants. Excellent.
Yeah. I hope you walk there, because I tell you, if you just start eating your way through Chicago, you'll have to roll out of here. So
absolutely. We basically didn't eat all day so that we could have a really good meal at night. Yeah.
Yes.
So Chris, you built obviously a very successful brand and brokerage with Climb Real Estate, which you eventually sold to Anywhere. So what were some of the business lessons that you learned through that process and then transferred into building Christie's?
Oh, wow, Tracey, that's such a great question. And, I feel like this is sort of a precursor to the book I'm going to write someday. But I think there were probably a ton of learnings, but there's probably 3 that I would probably share with you. And one was really our mantra at Climb Real Estate. And that was really that you don't need to be everything to everyone, but you just need to be great to a few hundred fans. And we did that very well. We specialized. We were really different. And in many ways, we were exceptional. The other thing that I think we did really well is we watched and learned from other industries. We looked at technology, we looked at marketing firms, we looked at retail, and we were really fortunate to actually be on the same street in the early days of Airbnb. And we had good fortune, Mark Troy and I, of touring the Airbnb offices. And they were really, really different, unlike anything we had seen before. And we kept saying to ourselves, how do we apply this to our own brokerage? And so for many of you that had seen actually the photography of our office spaces, it was truly different. And we were really inspired by Airbnb. And then the final is that we were really influenced by the software industry, being in Silicon Valley, and really the principles of agile software development. We would constantly test something, we would reiterate, we would learn, and we would adopt. And some things obviously were huge hits. Many of us know us for the Climb Airstream, but a lot of times we had huge disastrous failures, probably more than I'd like to admit. But in those disasters, I feel like there were really key learnings that helped us grow and evolve and take it to the next level.
And honestly, the failure is the best part in a lot of ways because you learn so much. And that's what entrepreneurship is all about, learning from those failures and then rebuilding into something greater. So, if you've got any specific stories that you could share, I would love that.
I mean, one thing that obviously we were in San Francisco. It was very expensive office market. And so we were really testing, we couldn't really afford to have really huge 4,000, 5,000 square foot offices. And so we forced to be creative. And so, one thing that we tested was the condo store, which was a 500 square foot office in kind of what we thought was this ideal burgeoning area of San Francisco. But there was no parking. And Mark will tell you there was no internet. So it was an unmitigated disaster. It was this beautiful office that we called the condo store. And Mark's like, we have no parking and we have no internet. What are you doing? And so I feel like I had to make it up with the Airstream, but that small condo store was definitely an unmitigated disaster.
Yeah. Oh, I think those stories are fun too, because I think every brokerage leader can relate to them. And Natalie, I want to talk to you a little bit about talent attraction. So how are you doing that at Christie's, and what are some of the tenets of that that you're really trying to get across to brokerage owners and affiliates?
Yeah, well, Tracey, I love this question so much because of the unique perspective and story that I have with this brand. What a lot of people probably don't know is that I was with Christie's for approximately 10 years prior to the acquisition. So I left Christie's to come work, at Ab Properties, to work alongside Chris and really learn from Mike and Thad. And then shortly after, Chris and I sourced the Christie's deal. So all in, I was actually only away from this brand, I would say, for about 6 months, which Chris jokingly calls my study abroad. So I really do have this unique lens of the before and after, and I knew exactly what we needed to change, but also, again, what we had to maintain. So in essence, I would say everything changed, but the core did not. And the core that I'm referring to, obviously, is the brand, because you cannot deny the extrinsic, non-quantifiable value of this brand. You can go anywhere in the world and say, I'm with Christie's International Real Estate, shoulders drop and ears open. But I also knew that if we could successfully, again, as I referenced, airlift and implement the suite of services and this value proposition that has made Ab Properties so wildly successful, and marry that with this iconic brand, then lights out. It would be a complete game changer for us. And so that's exactly what we've done, and that's exactly what we'll continue to do.
And do you have any maybe kind of lessons learned through that whole process in what you're doing now?
Yeah, I think the biggest lesson that we have learned is to make sure that we are, we always get caught up and we want to provide value, we want to provide value, we want to, give them all of these marketing materials and training and coaching. But many times, and I tell my team all the time, let's step back, because if we don't have a strategic way to educate them and drive adoption, then it's for nothing. And so I think with everything that we implement and provide, all of the value that we provide, it has to start with the basics. How are agents going to, use this? How is it going to help them sell more real estate? And how do we easily and efficiently give it to them in a way that they leverage it in a very positive way? And so that is really what we do every time we deploy something. And if you don't do that, you can see, I've been at this job for a very long time, running servicing. And I will never forget, I was in Argentina probably 10 years ago. And we had this amazing new initiative with the auction house. It was this really cool postcard initiative we were putting up in all the sales galleries. And I felt like I had talked about it until I was blue in the face to all of my affiliates. I'm like, this is going to be amazing. So we get to this conference and an affiliate comes up to me and she said, I just heard from someone else that there's this postcard program that's going into the sales galleries at the auction house. And I almost fell on the floor. I'm like, how does she not know about this? And then it kind of made me realize you have to really look at everything through the lens of an agent. How are they going to digest this information? How are they going to understand it and utilize it? And that's really what we do now every time.
Yeah, that's so smart. And it's basically, you think you're communicating your message too much, and there's really no limit to the amount of communication that you could do.
There is no limit. It is, yes, exactly.
Definitely. The next one is really I ask everyone on the podcast this question, and it's so interesting. Obviously, as entrepreneurs and leaders, you have a lot of aha moments, but some of them probably stick out a little bit more than others, and we're really a transition point in the growth of your business or maybe your personal growth. So Chris, we're going to start with you. what was kind of your aha moment that really sticks out the most?
This is such a great question because I actually remember my aha moment. Natalie and I were actually here in the office very in the early days when we first began, really late at night. And we were thinking to ourselves, how do we marry the very best of our culture and the technology that we have? And how do we marry that with a brand that is synonymous with luxury any of the world? And we knew that the biggest opportunity was in the luxury real estate market. I had seen that firsthand at Anywhere, and I had actually seen it firsthand in my local San Francisco market. And it was in that moment that we knew we needed to change what we were doing and that we needed a brand like Christie's. And what's so funny is that, fast forward to almost 2 years and we've seen that thesis play out, and candidly, it was a dream for us to have to be able to marry this technology, this culture, this leadership, and now with the best brand in the world. And we've seen that proven true. We look at our brokerage owners, they're all increasing their market share, they're increasing their average sales price, they're increasing their transaction volume, and it's all because of their affiliation with Christie's. And I'll tell you, I have seen doors open because of this brand and now this network. And it is truly like what we're creating is like no other.
Great. And Natalie, for you, what was your aha moment?
Well, I think it comes from our team, and I'm constantly looking for ways to, make them more efficient. And I want this to be a fun and engaging place to work. And I want Chris and I are always, making sure that they can come talk to us about anything because our team is incredible and extremely hardworking, and we would be nowhere without them. And they've, experienced a lot of change. A lot of our team members were with us prior to the acquisition, and, they'd been with us for as long as I have, which was about a decade. And so we had kind of the way that we'd always done things. And I want to make sure that we're all working toward the same goal, which is to provide the best service to our network so that we are building the best network of independent brokerages in the world, full stop. And so I was looking at my calendar one day. I came in, and I think it was a Monday, and I was completely booked, sometimes double booked. And I always laugh because my husband and I have this when things slow down. We say that in our house. Oh, when things slow down, we'll take a vacation. Or when things slow down, or, our daughter B grows up, we'll do this. And one day he just stopped me and he said, you do realize that life will never slow down. You do realize that. So that's kind of our joke now. So I have on my desk my when things slow down kind of list of priorities for what I want to accomplish here in this network. But you cannot do that when you're completely booked and double booked. And I sat there for a minute and I thought, if I'm experiencing this, I feel like my team is experiencing this. So my big aha moment was, in life, we do tend to do things just for the sake of doing them. And we can easily get stuck in a rut of, well, this is how we've always done it. And so I realized that I'd never really asked our team, why are we doing this? And, the why is recurring meetings and old outdated, the process of how we've done things before. So by simply posing this question of why we are doing this to our team, we were able to change completely the way that we structured our day. It changed our efficiencies, our outlook, our attitude, and we're able to really, check in on each other and make sure that we're working toward our highest and best use, which is service to our network. And so I encourage everyone to ask that to themselves and to their team, because you might be surprised by what you learn.
Oh, that is so true. I mean, I have the same schedule. And when I took over the department that I'm now managing, the previous manager had scheduled meetings. We had a team meeting every morning. We had one-on-ones.
Yes.
We had like
Very common.
a million meetings. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, what can we accomplish in a more efficient way?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Meetings. That's what it is.
Yeah, you have to have time to think and strategize and plan, and
that's right.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's really hard to do that. And we, my husband and I have done the same thing. Our daughter plays volleyball. Our son is older; he's 27, but it's like, okay, when volleyball ends, we're going to go on a vacation.
Right.
It's
that
ended.
Vacation never comes.
So, yes, it's never ending. Yeah.
It's the culinary tour of Chicago.
Right. That was a volleyball trip. So yes, exactly. No, we're going to go to Europe this year. She's not playing club again. She's a senior in high school, and we've already set the trip over Christmas. So
you're right.
It's like we're no longer going
crazy.
That's right.
It's so important to do those things, and we probably wasted a lot of time not doing them, just going, on volleyball trips. So,
Right.
so yeah,
Smart.
definitely. Although it
Good.
was worth it for her. So
Yeah.
yeah. Um, I'm going to skip the next question. I'm going to come back to it because I really want to talk about inspiration and motivation. And, I know I listen to a ton of podcasts and I read a lot of different books. And there are a lot of people that I follow. So what I want to know from you, and Natalie, we'll start with you, where do you find inspiration and motivation? And it could be from podcasts or books, it could be from people, it could, there's obviously a lot of different places to pull it from.
Yeah, there are. And I love podcasts and I am a avid reader. I love to read. But this one really came easily to me because I recently lost my grandmother. We were extremely close, and it gave me the opportunity to focus on one's life and legacy. And as I was looking at this extraordinary woman's life, I called her Mimi. It provided me with so much inspiration. But her nickname to our small town was Hurricane Hamrick. And she had such depth and passion for her community and for her students. She was a teacher in our small town for decades. And at her service, I was inundated by stories from her former students who told me, that she'd really changed their life because she was always available. She listened and she gave them the tools to succeed, and everyone felt important in her eyes. And I bring that desire to work with me every day. I love this network. I love the agents. I've become so close with our broker owners. It really is like a big family. And, I want to have them look back on my legacy here. And I hope it's reflective of that. I hope that they say, that I was a source of inspiration for them and for the network, and someone who listened to their needs and delivered and was always available. And hopefully I can help change their life in some small way, whether that's getting one more listing or feeling empowered to use the brand and confident in their abilities. That's what's important to me.
Well, I am sorry for your loss, but she sounds like she was an amazing person, and you're
She
taking a
really
lot
was.
away from her. So that's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Chris, what about you? Can you
It's
top
so
that one?
hard
I
to
don't know.
follow that. I didn't have any lost relative, and it's quite funny because I was really thinking about this. I thought the pressure of like having some profound or inspiration, and then what I realized is I didn't actually need to look much further than the agents and owners in our network. And I said they provide me with endless inspiration, because running your own real estate practice. An independent brokerage, it takes courage, it takes drive, it takes entrepreneurship. And what I love about the real estate agent and being one is that you're simultaneously a CEO, COO, CMO, CTO, and CFO. And you're running the most important business, yours. And so when I travel around the world visiting agents, I'm constantly reminded of the work of an agent and what they do for their clients. I mean, they're creating wealth for generations, and they're actually helping with the most important place on earth, home. And so, I'd be remiss though when we talk about motivation, and to mention Mike Golden and Thad Wong, who have provided endless inspiration for both Natalie and me. Everything that we have and everything that we do here at Christie's International Real Estate stands on the shoulders of that properties. And to keep that spirit alive, for me, is our greatest motivation.
Yeah, they are definitely incredible leaders.
They are.
Very inspiring. So
We're very lucky
Yeah.
to be here.
Every day. We are very lucky. I always laugh. Sometimes, you can see Thad's brain working, and I just will sit there. I wish I had popcorn. I'm just taking it all in, just listening.
Yeah.
So I never walk out of his office without probably 8 pages just full of notes.
Yes.
And I will tell you, it was wonderful to be at Gathering of Eagles and to hear Steve, Steve Murray talk about actually that young lady, Natalie Hamrick, who we saw as an up and comer, and to really acknowledge, Thad Wong as the best recruiter of our industry. And I was very proud, but also very motivated to be working with both Natalie and Thad. And also to realize that Steve, who changed my life, as you know, he was responsible for the sale of Klein, and he, without him, I'm very grateful. So it was really kind of a neat moment.
I feel the same about him. I started with him 17 years ago,
Wow.
2 years before the acquisition of HousingWire, and he has taught me an incredible amount about the industry and just about life in general.
Yeah.
And I still talk to him at least once a week for that inspiration
He's an
and
industry
ideas.
icon, so I think we'd probably have to mention him, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
That's true.
Absolutely. My next question is really more not necessarily about Christie's, but about the brokerage industry in general. And Natalie, I'll start with you. Where do you see the most opportunity for brokerage leaders over the next maybe year or so?
I heard this on a podcast several months ago. And it really resonated with me. I don't remember the podcast. I think Oprah actually said this. You can't really be inspirational and look for opportunity without talking about Oprah. But she said, people get to where they want to go because they know where they want to go. And it kind of stopped me in my tracks because oftentimes we forget to ask our agents and our team and ourselves, where do you want to go? And what's important to you? And my grandmother always told me, if you don't ask the right questions, then don't expect the right answer. So the opportunity right now is to understand really where you want to go, where your brokerage wants to go, where your agents want to go, and pivot and work toward that. And I think just stopping and asking these simple, basic questions to get a good understanding of your goals in life, professionally and personally, are so important and oftentimes really overlooked.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris, what about you?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it actually could be really, really complex, especially now with commission lawsuits and all of the changes and, sort of the, commissions changing. But for me, the answer was really, really simple. The biggest opportunity is actually the one that's in front of you. And every market shift in my mind presents an opportunity. And I remember my opportunity was actually the call that I got from Thad Wong at the very beginning of the pandemic. And he asked me to kind of move to Chicago, so halfway across the country from where I was, to launch the national expansion of @properties. And as you can imagine, I was very resistant. In fact, I thought he was crazy. I didn't even want to get on a plane. And that's saying a lot because, the opportunity that Thad and Mike gave me was really sort of my dream. It was the opportunity of a lifetime for me, especially because the expansion of Climb was put on hold. And so I feel like anytime there's a market shift or change, there's a bigger opportunity on the other side.
Yeah, I agree. Huge opportunity to gain market share as well.
Absolutely.
So definitely. And if you could just offer one piece of advice for maybe newer brokers, those just just starting a company or starting in the business as a leader, what would that be? And Chris, I'll start with you on that one.
God, these are great. These are really, really, really great questions. What I will say is the brokerage business is hard work, and it's even harder work to be successful. And so I think the advice that I would give is to really surround yourself around people you really love and that you really love working with. And that person may be completely different than you or complementary in my case, but always choose to work with someone who inspires you and who makes you grow and who helps you honestly be your best self. And so at Climb, I was very, very fortunate to work with Mark Choi. And here at Christie's, I'm very fortunate to work with Natalie. I guess we're going to call her the Hammer, because she's not a tornado. She's more the hammer. And
Hammer,
so
Hamrick.
Hammer Hamrick, right? The Velvet Hammer, actually. But I will say, kind of all the success that I've had in this business was because of the partnerships I had. And what's been so rewarding for me is that those business relationships are now lifelong friends. And so that's the advice I would give, is to really surround you around people that you admire, you respect, that challenge you and force you to be your best self.
And go to events like the Gathering of Eagles where you can
Of
meet
course.
others like that, right?
That's right.
Exactly. And I completely agree with Chris. And one of the main drivers of all the success and growth that we've shared together is that we respect and trust each other immensely.
We do.
But we also laugh and have a wonderful time because my jokes are way funnier than his. But so my advice is to also choose your partner very carefully. You have to know their strengths and you need to get out of their way, when you need to. And Chris and I do have very complementary, but also very different strengths and weaknesses. So we do give each other that runway and the ability and space to like lead and, depending on the circumstance. But I would say most of all, I think humor is very, very underrated and I love it. So don't forget to laugh and make fun of yourself along the way because it's so important because you come here every day. You have to be with these people every day. For example, I never met a stage or a microphone I didn't like. And Chris keeps finding ways to lose his microphone, which is probably why this morning I came in ready to go. And he was like, "Oh, do we have to turn our cameras on?" I'm like, "Yeah, we're turning our cameras on. We're talking to Tracey." So,
that's great. My last question is just what's next for Christie's? And Chris, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, it's interesting, to kind of predict what the future holds, and I can't, unfortunately, predict the future. And it's really hard to know what the future holds. All that I know is that where there's opportunity, we at Christie's are going to seize it. And that's exactly what I've done my entire career. When I started as an agent 21 years ago, I would have never, ever predicted this journey. I was really focused on beating Sue Bowie, my nemesis on Noe Valley, to win a listing. But then, from that, I then learned to build the team. And I was really inspired by the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, which changed my life. And then fortunately, I had the very good fortune of meeting Mark Choi. You won't believe this, but we met at an open house and he was my client. And together we built and sold Climb and Realogy, which was so good to me, and my mentor, Sherry Chris, who afforded me really the opportunity to learn how to be a franchisor. And then, when Thad Wong called, I answered. And then I had the very good fortune. Someone told me, "You need to meet this extraordinary woman for brunch." And I did. And that happened to be Natalie Hamrick. And so the rest is history. And so all I can tell you is that when there's an opportunity, I'm going to seize it.
That's great. And Natalie, you get the final word.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
She always does. She always gets the final word. Let's be clear about that, Tracey.
Well, like Chris said, I can't predict the future either. But what I can tell you is that I am committed to empowering other females in the industry to help them reach their goals. It is a huge passion of mine because unfortunately, most realtors are women, but women are less represented in executive roles. And what I can tell you about the future of Christie's International Real Estate is that I will continue to advocate and empower women within our organization. And for the network, I will help our broker owners do the same.
That's a great final word. I like that one.
I love that.
Well, Chris and Natalie, thank you so much for joining the RealTrending podcast. It has been a pleasure. And I appreciate you both so much.
We do too. And Tracey, I just want to put a word out at the next year's Gathering of Eagle pickleball. Hamrick and I are going for the gold. We are going to take home the crowd. So
I don't know.
All of you listening, we are practicing all year, and we'll see you in Arizona with our paddles, our outfits, our hats, our sunscreen, and
an extra bag for our trophy.
I don't know. I'm playing this year too, so I might find a partner. It's on. The competition is on. All right. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Tracey.
Thank you.